Welcome, everyone. We're just waiting a few more seconds for people to get into the room and join before we get started. A few more joining right now. We'll give it just another second. All right, thanks for joining, everyone. Today, we're talking AI-powered risk management, the future of insurance. The insurance industry has undergone significant changes over the last few years. Like many of us, we've seen a lot of shifts even post-COVID. So going back, looking over the past 5 years, AI has been a huge change agent for all industries, and insurance is right up there with all the other industries. Change is happening, and what we want to talk about today is where we're seeing the change in the insurance industry. So we have with us today Jason Allen, who's joining us as the Director of Risk Control Services at Collins and Associates. And then we have Dr. Mike Getch with us as well, who's the head of product at Soter. So as we get started, let me introduce myself, and then I'll turn it over to Jason and Mike for a brief introduction, and then we'll jump right in. So I'm Heather Chapman. Pleased to see you all here. We'll be looking at your chat, so if you have questions along the way, feel free to drop them in chat, and we will come to those later. Otherwise, we will have time for Q&A after. My background is environmental health and safety, and I have worked in plant safety or corporate safety for 25 years. I've worked in all sorts of different manufacturing sectors, retail, logistics, academia, automotive. I've touched all sorts of different industries. And the one thing, or the few things that doesn't matter the industry that you're in, all of these industries and businesses face challenges with injury prevention, with ergonomics, and with safety culture. So over the past 25 years, I have spent a significant portion of my career focusing on those three things with all of the businesses that I've worked with. In 2018, I started a safety consulting company. I'm based in Michigan. And at that time, I immediately started looking for technology to help my business be more efficient. And I came across Soter Analytics back then and started using their wearable MSD prevention technology in my business. So over the last 7 years, I have worn many hats with Soter, from customer service to sales to helping with the product development, and finally in the past couple of years, really getting to wear the hats that suit me most. And I spent a year and a half working with a lot of Soter's clients on ergonomic programs and implementing and integrating Soter's ergo technology into businesses and helping them with the strategy for, reducing all those ergonomic injuries. And then in the past year, working alongside Mike to launch the AI software, which is the linchpin of what we're talking about today. So I'll turn it over to Mike and let him introduce himself, and then Jason will come to you.
Hey, everybody. Dr. Mike Getch. For the first 8 years of my career, I treated patients. So I was in the workers' comp world as well, only on the treating side of things. And then over the last 2 years have transitioned into more of a technology product facing role. And so a lot of my job is exciting because there's these new technologies, there's these emerging technologies that we want to use at Soter to help people like you do your jobs better, maybe more efficiently, maybe reach a higher quality of life. And so I get the fun job of sometimes living in the future and seeing where is all this going, and then how do we build for that. And so some of the things that I'll talk about today are about stuff that's happened in the past, but then I'll also try to do a decent job at painting where we're going, and so you can be prepared, because a lot of this is happening outside of any of our controls. There are companies, there are organizations that are building things that the intent is to help us do our jobs better. And at Soter, what we're trying to do is take those and apply them to the risk and safety field. So I'm really excited to be here. Hopefully we're engaging today, and I'll transfer it over to Jason for his introduction.
All right, thank you, Mike. Good afternoon, everyone. As Heather mentioned, I'm the Director of Risk Control Services at Collins and Associates. My background is I've been doing EH&S work for over 20 years. I've primarily been in the general industry and construction sectors. And I would say my specialty is probably the critical life safety programs like lockout, confined space, fall protection. But overall, I am a generalist. And in my current role, we'll talk about this more today, I deal with a wide variety of clients. So I'm expanding outside of general industry and working with more construction, more fuel and gas, fleet, even mine safety. So we'll talk today about how Soter's helping me navigate into those different areas. Looking forward to our conversation.
Great, thank you guys. And lovely, based on those introductions, I think we firmly established that I am the oldest one here. So that's great. Hopefully that means I can provide some good insight and wisdom along the way. So what are we talking about today? Well, AI is basically, as Mike alluded to, it's literally everywhere. It's evident in every profession and pretty much in all aspects of our lives nowadays. I mean, as simple as looking to Netflix and Siri and Alexa, things that we're using every day, AI is behind that. As an insurer or an agency or a broker, we expect and hope that you see Soter AI can be used to streamline some of your normal processes, some of those admin related tasks that maybe aren't necessarily value added into your business, but they have to be done. The AI itself can level the playing field in terms of a knowledge base. I'm thinking particularly about risk consultants. When you bring somebody new on board, maybe they don't quite have the experience or background knowledge to be able to produce as high quality of work as somebody who has 20 years of experience. Well, AI can help bridge that gap. And then we can also look to see the AI is being applied in all lines of businesses and all of the tasks that support those different lines of business. So today, we're primarily going to focus on the use of AI in the risk consulting world. But we'll touch on claims management, and I have a couple of examples I'd like to share with that. And then we'll hear from Jason regarding his experiences as well. So I hope that throughout today, you get some context on what is AI, how is it getting used, but then also some use cases. How is this actually getting used, and what are some examples? At Soter, we also like to say that AI doesn't replace HI, HI being human intelligence, and rather it's a partnership. So I'm going to hand over to Mike and let him lay the foundation of what is AI, and we'll take off from there.
Yeah, so on the screen, you'll see a couple of points that I think are important for where the current state of AI is today. And many times when you do these webinars, everyone's trying to do like a state of the union, like where is everything at? Like, what should we know to better apply to our jobs? And so that's what I kind of want to do a little bit. But if you have never used an AI product before, a large language model like a Copilot from Microsoft or a ChatGPT or Grok, these products are, very ubiquitous in society now. The consumer demand for them is in the upwards of 1 billion active monthly users. So there is people across the entire world that are using these products in simple use cases like generate a love letter or generate a poem. But then there is this entire, business focused AI world where people in companies are building these AI large language model based products to actually do work. And I saw a statistic that I didn't include here, but in 2022, there was 1.6% of insurance professionals who had integrated some form of AI into their workflows. And today, it's creeping up to 70%, meaning this has been a wave of movement towards, everyone in the industry is going to use this. And I don't like the fear of, well, if you don't use it, you're going to be behind. But if you use the right tools, you will definitely have an edge. And that's what I hope to kind of open up and go through today is how can you use these tools to better do your job? One of the big breakthroughs this year, well, 2024, was these reasoning models. So you may have seen like an O1, if you've ever heard of that name before. That was the first reasoning model that got released. And what that means is when you would use an AI product before, and let's say someone was to I'm going to use a human example, but if someone was to come to you guys and say, how do I reduce this risk? It would almost be like these old models would just answer immediately. They would just start talking right after the end of the question that was presented. They would just start talking and start rambling off an answer. And the way that those older models, the GPT-4s of the world, is it's just trying to predict what's the next word I'm going to say. Well, that's where you get some hallucinations. That's where you get some outputs that may be not desirable, because it's almost like, I'm going to play this scenario where it's like, what should we do for this scenario? And then immediately you're like, this is what you should do. You should go do this. You should go. And there's no thought. Whereas now the reasoning models, the models are trained to think like we would, meaning you sit back, you kind of survey the landscape of the question, you break it down into its smallest components, and then you build back an answer that is more reasoned. What that unlocks is higher level knowledge tasks, especially in fields that require precision and require accuracy. Both of those things are different things, but they're very important. And with these reasoning models now, you're going to start to see a trend towards much more relevant answers and responses, because now the models are able to think through their answers before they give them to you. So that's one big breakthrough. The second thing, and this is what Soter AI is, but it's a purpose-built AI, meaning it's for a specific field, it's for a specific industry, with logic and tools that are built on top of the underlying model. So, you could have a general purpose foundation model that, you can ask it to write a recipe, or you can ask it to do this or do that. But when you have a vertical agent that has either knowledge that is tailored to an industry, or logic that is built specifically for an industry, you're going to get a higher resolution of answers because of these vertical agents. And then the last thing, and this is the thing I'm most excited about, is reduce costs. Many times, people are a little hesitant to adopt new technologies because of the price point, or because, the adoption, it requires a bit of learning. So the cost that you see on the sticker doesn't match the amount of work you've got to do to get integrated with it. Whereas what's happening now is you're getting these open source models that drive costs to zero. And you also get what's called Jevons paradox. Jevons paradox just basically says, when it becomes easier or more efficient to produce a resource, more people consume it. So when that happens, you get a higher demand, you get more usage from these models, from these AI products, which allows for these companies to reduce their prices. Because before it was a very limited demand market that they were selling into, so their prices were a bit higher. Well, once the demand grows and it reaches escape velocity, especially with these open source models, that brings the cost of compute way down. And now you can access these intelligent systems for fractions of pennies. And so, and if it's directed in your industry, in your field, you've got this assistant that is far cheaper, far less expensive than having your own EA, present with you at all times. So that's the thing that's really exciting about where we're at now and where we're going. And you can go to the next slide. How Soter AI, remember Soter AI is that vertical agent. How we developed it was we just aggregated all of the world's health and safety data and trained these models on that data so that it uniquely has a contextual awareness of these fields. And when you do that, and you close the aperture on a specific industry, you close the aperture on a specific field, you get increased accuracy, you get a better response, a more tailored response to that industry. Now, if you ask Soter AI to write you a recipe or something like that, it's not going to do it. It's actually going to refuse your request because it's been trained to only answer questions within this specific domain of expertise, which is what you want. You don't want just an open-ended tool, because then you've got the guardrails are just not in place. Now, how do we improve it? How does at Soter, how does our engineering teams and product teams look to improve this model over time, so that you get a better answer? The one thing that we use is we learn better methods and tactics of taking that information that I talked about before, that knowledge base, and distilling it down into these models even better. So it means the hallucinations go down. So I believe that when we launched this versus now, the hallucinations has gone, way down almost to near zero, because we've learned new tactics and techniques of how to apply this information. And so that's how it's improving over time. And I don't know if it will ever get to zero hallucinations, because even humans, we tend to obfuscate and hallucinate at times if we just don't know it. And so I don't know if it will ever be a 0% thing, but we're moving in that direction. The next thing is just speaking with customers. That's probably the most effective way that we improve it, is building workflows or building tools or building features that better align with your day to day. And the more we talk with customers, the more we get feedback from you, the better this product gets. Right now, I like to say that Soter AI is an answer engine. You can ask it questions that you may not know off the top of your head, and it's going to be able to pull from that pre-trained knowledge source and give you answers. So it's really good at producing answers. It's really good at being an assistant. So if you've got to write this program, this policy, this toolbox talk, and you say, I want you to do this, I want you to do this, and I want it to be written in this manner, it's going to go out and do that grunt work for you. So then you can sit back as more of a critiquer or more of a manager and instruct it where to go, as opposed to being in the weeds and writing out these documents or typing out these documents. It puts you in a better position to be more strategic. And then the last thing it does is it performs advanced reasoning on images, videos, policies, any other types of documents, to help you better understand where improvements, could and should be made. And it really helps support the work that you're doing, from site visits to policy reviews to even writing out any type of recommendations for a client. Now, how is it different? This is the main question I get. The main question is that Soter AI is a vertical agent, meaning it's been trained on a specific vertical for a specific use case. It's not just a general open source foundation model. What that means is it's built with you in mind, meaning it's based on your feedback. So the tools, the logic, the workflows that we build only comes or only changes when you guys instruct it to, or when you guys give that feedback, or if there's a new opportunity that we see. So whereas other products, ChatGPT, Grok, Copilot, they have their own roadmaps. They're trying to do other things. What we're really hyper focused on is, how does this model get better for your industry? And so hopefully that sets the tone for where we're going the rest of this webinar, and I'll pass it off.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for that information. As Mike said, a lot of how this model and this solution itself gets better and continues to improve and, respond to the various different needs that people have. It's based on customer feedback. And so over the past year, as this product has been launched, we have had hundreds of conversations with different safety professionals, risk consultants, different insurance agents. And we, for the insurance industry, we summarized it down into a few areas where there are key challenges for this particular function. And so as we think about, the rest of the presentation and how AI can come into play, I want to underpin all of that with, these are the main challenges that we've heard. And so this tool that we've designed is to help you address these main challenges. So let's talk about fragmented data. I mean, this is in the safety profession as well, but everybody has their own way of conducting an inspection, or how they insert pictures into an inspection, where they keep their data, what type of file the data is in. Is it Excel? Is it PDF? Is it something else? Is it in a manual? Is it a standalone policy? That's in the insurance world, that's in the safety world. When everything is scattered and not centralized and not in the same format, it becomes problematic, and you lose the ability to report on things quickly because you're scrambling to find things. So the AI tool we can combine these two things together, the inconsistent access to critical data and the fragmented data. Why don't we put this all together in one spot? So Mike mentioned a knowledge base. I'll call it the brain, but in Soter's platform, we have a brain, and the model itself is already trained on the things that Mike had mentioned, all of these safety regulations and EPA and global health and safety standards. But you can also put in your own corporate specific standards and policies as well. That goes in the brain. And now, as Mike said, we have this vertical agent that's trained on all these safety regulations or EHS regulations. We also now have your own specific regulations. So everything becomes housed in one central brain, and it can take a look at the PDF or the Excel and not have to export data and do new trending analysis. It can read all of that. It doesn't need to be in a specific format. But when we house it in this brain, it allows immediate access to that information, whether you're sitting at your desk or you're out in the field at a client site. This solution houses all of that information for you and makes it immediately available. And as we were discussing, this is your partner. So I would consider Soter AI as another risk consultant, somebody who has information on literally all lines of business, all books of business, and all of the hazards within those different industries. This is like your A1 partner right here. And so when you're in the field or when you're writing reports or doing inspections, you're asking them questions. The other great thing is, and I think Jason has an example later, when you're taking on a new policyholder, there's some lack of or limited access to historical data. And if you do get it, you have no idea what format it's going to be in. And what if it's 1,000 lines long? Are you taking the time to really analyze that? You might, but you could just drop it in the brain and let Soter AI give you some insights immediately. We can now take historical data, all of those loss runs, your policyholders' own injury records, and we can put that into the Soter brain and do some analysis on that. What could take us hours can now be done in seconds. And then inability to assess control effectiveness. So, when we're talking to businesses and organizations, those senior leaders always want the ROI. What's the return on investment? How do I know that if I follow your lead, you're telling me I need to implement these controls to reduce risk? How do I know that that's actually going to give me a return on investment? Soter AI allows you to do that, and you can simply do that in a chat feature. You can have a conversation with Soter AI and talk about the solution and get an ROI. And I have an example later that I'll share to kind of highlight how this might look for you and how you could potentially do that workflow. So we can leverage the AI to help us justify the cost of controls that we're recommending. Just quickly, if we look at using Soter AI, I talked a bit about having access to all that historical data and not having to spend time doing the analysis ourselves, let the tool do it for you. When we speak throughout the course of this session, you can upload PDFs, you can upload text, you can upload videos, images. All of this information is used to assess risk and predict what might happen next. Soter AI is always going to be scanning that knowledge base. So the more information you put in it, the more accurate it's going to be, and the better it's going to be at giving you guidance, direction, and recommendations. And then let's just take an example. I'm at a policyholder site doing an annual inspection, and I'm watching somebody operate a fork truck. And I take a video of the person driving the fork truck. I upload it into Soter AI, and I carry on because I only have 2 hours at this site and then I need to move on. So I carry on, I go into the next room and I see somebody, palletizing boxes. Maybe I take a video, I upload it into Soter AI. When I am done with all of these photos and videos that I'm taking, I just keep carrying on with my day while I'm on site. When I leave the site, Soter AI has already analyzed all of these and already highlighted where there might be regulatory violations, where there are potential warnings or gaps. If there is a regulatory violation, it's going to give you the code, which code is actually being violated in this image or video, and it's going to give you recommendations on how do you bridge that gap? How do you get this person in compliance? Soter AI can generate a report for you, or I can take all of that and drop it into a template, whatever I want to do. But literally what could have taken me hours, Soter AI has done in the background while I've done my walkthrough. The hope is for this particular industry, as you become more efficient in your workflows and can provide hopefully bigger and better insights to your policyholders, they're going to be happy with you. They're going to be content with you. And ultimately, you get to retain them as a client. So we're hoping that the use of AI helps you help your policyholders reduce those claims costs, but also provide really great, easy insights for them that they can take action on with a proven ROI so that they remain content with your services and stay and renew their policies with you. So you'll see on the left-hand side a bunch of text. I'm not going to read all of that, but I will summarize for you what is the value proposition of Soter AI. We can surely use it to identify hazards. And then, I mentioned finding regulatory code violations. We can use it to predict future losses. We can use it to standardize how we're conducting risk assessments and standardize that report writing. All of that makes us more efficient. We know from, my own experience, but also lots of other risk consultants' experiences, that using this tool cuts their report writing time by about 60%, 50 to 60%. So that's pretty substantial. If you think about how much time that could save you, that allows you to do things that are more value add for your policyholders and for the business instead of sitting at your desk typing up reports. We're seeing good improvements in the claims management strategies and time for claims management, and I'll go through a couple examples. And then, when you start to use AI tools, depending on the ways in which you use it, it gives you an edge, like Mike mentioned. It can make you different from competitors. You could also potentially use AI as a revenue growth for yourself, for your business. Maybe this is a service that's offered to your policyholders, and it's a fee that they have to pay in order to have you on site to utilize this type of tool. Or maybe it's something you build into the policy. But as an example, on the right-hand side, there's a video here, and this was on site at a client. You can see the gentleman in the background. He is actually cutting open and then dumping bags, as well as lifting and dumping buckets into a large vat. It's a chemical processing vat, and he will do this for several hours a day. So this tool is simply from my 20-second video that I uploaded. It ran an ergonomics assessment, gave me the hazards, the risk, some potential control measures. And then I said, hey, can you suggest some more specific mechanical aids that we could use in this particular scenario? So it came back with some examples, some different things. And I was like, hey, I might like the idea of a vacuum lifter for the bags. because that's a powdered material he's dumping. A vacuum lifter could work. Can you give me some vendors? And here I could have queried further and said, what's ballpark budget on some of these? So that I would know, what am I going to potentially need to tell my client they're going to have to pay to get this vacuum lifter? And then I said, hey, look, we know from injury records, we've injured 12 people in the past 3 years, and we've spent about $250K on those injuries. It also impacted production and reduced the output by about 3%, which is substantial. If we spend $30,000 on a vacuum lift, what's the ROI? So now this tool is going through the return on investment calculation for me based on the data I gave it. And I was like, oh, actually, if I can use this vacuum lift and it makes them faster and it can increase production by 5%, how does that change the ROI? What does that look like now for this client? And so it does the calculation. It comes back with a new potential ROI of about 450%. This is all great. I'm going to switch gears. Hey, based on the risk factors here, please suggest an ergonomics program, an outline for the company, and include a toolbox talk, so that I can, before I leave, I can just hand this off to the client as here's one thing that you can do to get started on, mitigating risks and having a system in place for dealing with ergonomic risks in your company. And so it goes through, gives me the program outline with some detail, and then a toolbox talk as well. And I query once more, how about a return to work program? Knowing that we've had 12 claims on this and we've had several lost days, what can I do to help reintegrate these people back into the workforce? So it gives me a return to work program outline. And I want you to keep in mind, any one of these bullet points you could pull out and query further. This is, again, this is not just a chat bot. This is your partner. And so it's a conversation that needs to take place. So I could have pulled out any one of these and asked for further information, or I could have uploaded additional videos or additional information around the workers' compensation claims and dug further. So just an example of how a workflow might look. And, you're doing the risk assessment, you're identifying potential solutions, you're identifying what the return on investment would be. And by the way, I'm also going to help you with some additional items related to this. Here's the return to work program as well. So quick and easy tool, which could have taken hours in the past. That was probably 60 seconds of my time, that whole query. So just talk about streamlining the work that you're doing. That's pretty efficient. So inspections. We all do inspections. We're all going on site, or we have people that work with us that are going on site to do audits or inspections at policyholder sites. This tool will cut that inspection time by 30 to 40% easily. And then we already discussed that report writing time, cut that by 50% for sure. And then it's accurate. This particular video we're going to look at, this is at a chemical manufacturing company. And when I was there, just so happened that their closed system for moving flammable liquids was broken. And apparently it had just happened the week before. So as they're, going through this chemical manufacturing process, he's open dispensing a highly flammable liquid. And I took a short video, asked Soter to analyze this for me. And what this can do is identify multiple different hazards and risks and violations within seconds. So I could have stood there for 20 minutes jotting notes, looking things up, but I just dropped this video in there and then actually pulled the employee aside so I could have a conversation about what was going on and the why behind it. Why are we deviating from the norm? What's happening? And then, I was able to have a conversation with their general manager as well. But all of this is happening in the background. I don't I don't necessarily need the regulatory code violation for me to go have a conversation with the general manager, but all of this content, I'm going to need for my final report. So this is great in identifying all of the different hazards, give me the codes that are with it, and what are some recommendations for making improvements. Had I filmed some other things in the area, this could have identified other hazards that maybe I didn't even notice. What if I only had 5 years of experience and I wasn't really sure of the questions to ask? I don't have to be an expert in the field to go use this tool and have it start to point out where the hazards and risks and code violations exist. It's going to do that regardless of my experience. So, claims management side. Now, I started this workflow or this query by uploading a video of somebody performing a task. And what I want to share is the different ways within the insurance world. Now, maybe this is the claims management side. Maybe you have on-site athletic trainers or something that visit your policyholders. They might be interested in something like this. So I uploaded a video and I asked it what types of injuries could occur due to this job task. And I also asked it to identify what are the potential injuries based on the actual work that's being performed. And further up in this query, I essentially asked it to do a physical demand analysis of this job. So it's coming back and telling me, MSDs, it's laying out which types of strains and sprains, and it's giving me the laundry list of potential injuries based on the physical demands of that job. Okay, well, this happens to be in Wisconsin, and we know from claims histories that we have shoulder impingements in this job. So what's the average cost in Wisconsin? What does that look like? So it's going to give me a breakdown of factors that could influence the overall cost of this claim. And here it tells me based on NCCI, it's about 20 to 40K. Depending on what stuff is available at the state level, it could give us Wisconsin state specific averages. Okay, I now have to, I'm going to have to send this employee for an IME. Can you provide an IME letter to an ortho discussing causation based on the video? Additionally, take into account that this individual is 40 years old, is a smoker, diabetic, and has a history of pre-existing shoulder injury claims. I don't have to draft an IME anymore. This tool just drafted the letter for me, and all I need to do is put it on company letterhead or drop my company logo into here and send it off. So it's giving me an introduction. What's the background on this claimant? What are the physical demands of the job? Highlighting each of the main tasks and what are the physical demands of each of those tasks. And then what's the request here? Well, I want you as the IME to speak to causation and then the medical evaluation. Give me a detailed assessment and what treatment options would you recommend and work restrictions. Based on your evaluations, what restrictions would you suggest? All of this done in probably 30 seconds of queries versus hours of time trying to draft all of this. The other thing that we all know so well, and I certainly experienced early in my career working for a manufacturer, I supported their workers' comp program across North America. So I handled claims from New York to Ohio to California. So know full well the pains that come with understanding the jurisdictional nuances between all of the states. So let's just ask, what do I need to be aware of? In Wisconsin, as an example, what are my rights and responsibilities? Can you direct care in the state of Wisconsin? Can injured workers seek a second opinion? IQ is trained on all of this type of information, so it knows the exact answer. How do I handle disputes in Wisconsin regarding medical opinions? Just a query. You don't have to Google any of this. And again, if you have your own insurance policies or procedures that you need to follow step by step for certain claims or reserve setting, all of that can go right into the brain or the IQ. And now when you query or ask questions, it's going to reference that as well. So there's a lot of, again, just conversation that can take place within the tool. So Jason, if you don't mind kind of describing how you've been using it at Collins and Associates, and when you're ready, I'll play this example on the bottom.
Sure. Yeah, so we started using it last fall, and I would say now myself and the entire risk control team are using it on a daily basis. We probably use all of the workflows that are out there, but the three that we use most are the ergonomic assessments, the Hazard ID Pro, and the policy training program review. You showed two great examples of the ergonomic assessment and the Hazard ID Pro. You know, it's amazing how powerful the tool is and how quick it is. It really has saved us a lot of time, a lot of administrative time, which allows us more time on the floor and working with the clients to build action plans and implement action plans. Um, from a policy and training review standpoint, this is the one that I've been using the most recently. I've been doing a lot of assessments with clients, and through that assessment process, I have to go through all their policy documents or training documents, identify if there are any gaps. And so the video that you're seeing here, I took a client's 34-page safety manual, entered it into Soter, and within seconds, it identified 10 major areas that were missing in the manual, and under each area, specific points that needed to be addressed. And like you mentioned earlier, Heather, each one of these bullet points, I could have gone into more detail, asked more questions on, and have it expand. So this policy review workflow, I think, is a huge win. Prior to having Soter, I would print out a client's policy, I'd go print out the regulation, and I'd get a highlighter and I'd go through it and try to figure out what's missing. That would take hours. Now it can be done in seconds.
Yeah, I bet you're not the only one. I'm sure some other people chuckled, probably having done the exact same thing.
Yep.
Mike,
Yep.
I'm going to ask you to just give a brief introduction to predictive analytics, and then I'll share an example as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I think everyone has that perfect scenario of being able to predict the future. And I don't know if these tools will ever be quite that good, but what it will do is provide scenarios or simulations that can then help us make better decisions in the present. And that's what we have, a tool that analyzes spreadsheet data. So, that could be injury or incident data, that could be claims data that just lives in these tables. And when it's thousands and thousands of entries long, how do you get value out of those if maybe you don't know how to use Excel, or maybe there's just so much that sometimes the data becomes very general and you just want to know something very specific. We have a tool that will then take that table and produce a report about what it finds, maybe a breakdown of the stats or a summary of key findings. But then there's also this next injury prediction part of that model, where based off of all the historical data, it's going to put you and guide you in the direction of, this is where you're most likely to have an injury or an incident based off of the historical trends. And so for a lot of people that have these spreadsheets of data, they throw it in there, and then they get this next injury prediction part of that report. And it's like, in this example, it's like, this is going to occur in Sydney involving a sprain to the wrist. And then it even goes into what are the actions that the worker might be taking that would lead to that. And so then it helps create a better decision-making process in the present. And then you can go out there and say, okay, is our program, accurately or doing a good enough job preventing injuries in this specific thing? Because clearly there is a historical precedent that is present in the data. And this AI will then allow, you not to have to live in Excel for very long. You could just live in this chat functionality and ask questions against that data. So now you almost have, like I said, an assistant that knows this data intimately, and you're able to say, okay, well, what about this scenario? What about this? How can we attack this? And that context is always present within that chat, and so you can drill deeper than probably you've ever been able to on some of these large data sets, and that has been an invaluable product for a lot of people as well. So, I'll pass it back.
Yeah, I'll just, go a little deeper on that with an example here. This particular workflow that we're seeing on the far left, those we'll see the type of injury and then the total count. This was a huge Excel file that I got, and it had over 1,600 losses in this particular file. So, and I don't even know how many columns wide it was. It was monstrous, but I knew immediately when I looked at it, this is not something that I want to filter and sort and try to generate charts on. So I just took that Excel file, and it was not pretty, but I dropped it into Soter AI and immediately got a total injury by cause. So now I can start to see some quick trending on what's happening, what body parts, so which body parts are getting injured the most, and getting counts on that. This again was about 2 seconds of time. Job roles. So where are these happening? What locations? Now that for me was really important because it became really clear that just a couple of the sites were driving the majority of the injuries. We can see by month if there's any trends there. And then again, we can see, well, based on the data, and I could have given it even more data sets. That was just one. But based on that data, we're likely to have an injury in California to the low back, probably from being struck by or struck against objects, which makes sense because this is a very large grocery warehouse. And so there's a ton of traffic with pallet jacks and autonomous vehicles. And there's a lot of struck by injuries. So I ask again, can you suggest some preventative actions that can reduce the number of struck by incidents? I then give it a little bit more information to let it know that this is happening at a large grocery retailer. And it's set up like a warehouse where even the public comes in to shop. So it gives me some feedback, some specific steps to take with some bullet points under each. That's great. I do ask some further information about what can I actually do to prevent some of these other struck by injuries? The guardrails are awesome. The blue light idea I like, and shared with the client as well. Hey, if we implement these blue lights, can you kind of predict what that might look like in terms of return on investment? This chart also has injury costs in it. So it can also aggregate costs of each of these types of injuries. And if I start asking for ROI, it can focus in on maybe just back injuries caused by fork trucks in these 1,600 lines has cost X dollars. But if I implement something that costs $35,000, what's the ROI? And Soter AI can calculate all of that in a matter of seconds. So that's kind of the power of the predictive analytics and just allowing things to happen quickly. In the spirit of time, I'm gonna hand over to Jason and let you share your example about the data analysis workflow, and then I'll bring us to a close and we'll have time for questions.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, building off your example, one of the services we provide for all our clients is annually we run the loss data and we analyze it to look for trends. And based on those trends, we build that into our overall action plan with the client each year. When we run the data, it comes out in either PDF form or Excel form, but it's not set up in a way that's easy to manipulate. And it usually requires some manipulation of the data to get it to where it could be sorted and filtered to find the trends. That takes a lot of time. Using Soter, it does the analysis in minutes. And, we have some clients that are small family owned business. We have others that um, are very large, and the data that we could be sorting through could be 10, 20, 30 pages long. So using Soter to do the analysis, it's more accurate, it saves time, and it allows us to focus on the things that are important and not just doing number crunching behind a desk. So yeah, it's a game changer for the insurance world. And I think one other thing to hit on, in the insurance world, you're working with a variety of different clients. I could be at a manufacturing plant in the morning, and in the afternoon be on the roadside somewhere with a large construction company building a roadway. In between job sites, I could be building training programs for a convenience store. We work with people in all industries. And I mentioned at the beginning, my background's general industry with a little bit of construction, but now I'm having to work with clients that fall under MSHA regulations, DOT regulations. And as a generalist, you know enough about each of the regulations, but you don't know the specifics. Soter helps with that. I have this picture here as an example of a client that I recently went and did a hazard identification audit with. I had never been to a site that was regulated by MSHA. So I did a lot of research before I went, and I had Soter create a checklist for me. What are some of the key things that I need to be aware of and look for while I'm out on the job site? And we went back and forth a little bit, adding additional prompts and questions, and it came up with a 3 to 4 page checklist that I took with me on the job site. And if I'd have tried to create that checklist on my own, it would have taken hours. But the whole interaction with Soter was less than 30 minutes, probably less than 15. So it's a game changer for the insurance world.
That's
Yeah,
that's awesome.
can't say enough about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we all face that, just having to go into different clients. That's not really our background. And that's what I was mentioning early on too. This kind of helps level that playing field.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up, I think the key message I want to get across to everybody is that, this particular AI, Soter AI, should be seen as your partner, and a partner that helps you build stronger relationships with your policyholders. So, there's tons of benefits here on the slide, but I think a couple of things to really keep in mind is that it gives you efficiency, it gives you accuracy, and it could potentially open up new streams of revenue for you. Um, and it's basically your A1 expert partner. So when you're on site, when you're doing your inspections or building programs, this tool is literally here for you to ask questions to give you that starting point, so that you're not creating things from the ground up. So I'd like to leave the last few minutes for any questions that might be out there. Mike, I'm not sure if you can see in the chat what questions are there, if we want to go through those.
Yeah, so one that I didn't answer was at the beginning, and it's Jason, and he said, do you have a waiver for the customer to sign that will allow you to take video of equipment and people at their site? Heather, can you speak to that?
We don't have a waiver, but my guess is you, as their insurer, would have some sort of an agreement in place in the background, and or yeah, some legal groups at different sites will have a waiver already in-house that they would want you to sign. So Mike, can you clarify too, can we blur things as well if we need to?
So on the ergonomic workflow, when you're doing videos, that comes out of the box. When we are talking hazard ID, when we're talking some of these images and videos, we're working on a way for when that original image is uploaded to be able to blur that out after it's been processed, so that it's not living on the database that way.
Okay.
A couple other questions from Scott Clark. how does Soter AI approach regional regulations? For example, OSHA has a standard set of federal rules, but some states have their own specific regs. Yeah, Heather, I'll let you speak to that, even though I could as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, just like the federal or state level regulations, anything regional is also in there. So any special emphasis programs, it's in the knowledge base. If you wanted to add something in particular that wasn't maybe necessarily from OSHA or the EPA, like maybe you have something regionally from your fire department or your local city government has some sort of unique requirements around wastewater management. You can put that into the IQ, no problem.
Yep. And then also, if there is something additional that you're thinking should be more broadly in the knowledge base, maybe not just in yours. We had some property and casualty people ask for FM data sheets and those types of pieces of information. We can easily start to integrate some of those data points into the knowledge base so that you're getting a more holistic approach in the knowledge source. Greg Stevens asked, what AI engine is being used by Soter? Greg, we test and use all of them. I know this isn't going to be the answer you're looking for, but whether that's the underlying GPT models, whether that's Claude, whether that's the Gemini models, whether that's some of the open source models that are available, what our AI team does really, really well is find which model works best for what task. And so you might have a different model for one thing, and you might have another model for a different. And there's even an example I can think of where even in the same workflow, we use different models because one is better at asking clarifying questions and another is better at analyzing things. So we use an amalgamation plus some of the things that we use internally or have built internally as well. So it's more of an amalgamation approach as opposed to just settling on one. Next question is, you mentioned near zero hallucinations. Large high-risk industrial companies need zero hallucinations before trusting AI to interpret and report on safety data trends and insights. How should companies address this? I'll answer from my perspective, and then Heather, I'll pass it up to you. What I'll say is this is where the human in the loop is so important because, as an expert, you're gonna know that if something is either off or when you drill deeper, it's never meant to score the touchdown. It's meant to get you to the 2-yard line, and then you've got to run it into the end zone. Is an analogy that we use every once in a while. Heather, anything you want to add to that?
No, I would agree with that. And also, even a human is not going to be 100% perfect. So I think the whole point is that these two things, the human and the machine, work together to reach that near zero risk. I get it. High risk industries, you want zero, but I don't know that a human can achieve that alone either. So the intent would be the AI gets you 99.9% there, and you need to use your own judgment to kind of kick it across the line.
Yep. A couple questions I'm going to ask quickly. One is, does it support other languages? Yes. Whenever you talk to it, if you type in Spanish or French or whatever other language, it's going to respond in that language. You can upload in that language as well. Another question was, is Soter AI available as a white label? Scott, that's more of a business related question. We've had those conversations with some insurance companies. So I think we need more details because, when we say white label, that can mean one thing to one company and then another for another. So I would say, yes, it can be done. But there's some further clarifying questions we would need to ask.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Jennifer Leptian asked, are the code regulations cited also state specific like for California? Yes, exactly the same. It will link to the source of the data each time. Bob Feldman asks, is Soter's regulatory analysis only based in US regs, or can it provide analysis for other countries? Yeah, I've mentioned this a couple of times, but there are multiple jurisdictions: Canada, Mexico, UK, Australia, New Zealand, Finland. There's a lot of countries. And then if you're working in a unique market, so let's say you're in Brazil or another market, those things are quickly added into the system. We would just, through that partnership, through that conversation, we would know what you guys need for your unique use case. Will the Soter AI ask clarifying questions? Yeah, I actually mentioned that. There are specific workflows where it will ask clarifying questions if it doesn't have all the information. So this is a balancing act, because there's a lot of times that clarifying questions enhance the response, and other times it's just it slows you down. And so in certain workflows it will, in other workflows it won't. But yeah, we're trying to keep the human in the loop as much as possible for that nuance or some of those clarifying contextual answers that may be relevant. Next question from Mustafa: what do you think of us using such tool, and what do you think good balance may look like? I'll let Jason or Heather answer that, because I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that one. Or he says, I mean, drawbacks of using it. Yeah, go ahead.
The drawbacks?
He said, I mean, the drawback, like if you become reliant on a tool, does that like soften your brain to being able to pick up stuff?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it's a partnership, like was mentioned before. It takes a human element to work with Soter to provide a whole package to your clients or to your organization. I use it as much as possible to save me time, be more efficient, and be more accurate. I don't see any drawbacks from my perspective.
Yeah, and I always say there's the human element that goes to all of this. The AI, use it as much as you possibly can to give you efficiencies where it makes sense. When it comes to maybe delivering the final product to your policyholder or client or whatever, you don't want to just hand them an AI chat. That's where you come in. That's where you're going to talk through the report, and you're going to deliver it in a human professional manner, not just a chat situation. So like we've all said, it's a partnership, and yeah, I mean, use it to make yourself efficient, but never, I always tell people, especially safety professionals, if you're using AI, whatever AI gives you in the first chat, that's never the final answer. That is your starting point. So when it gives you a response, that's your opening. That's where you start asking questions and you have that back and forth query. And again, treating it not like an AI, but like a person. Have that conversation.
Yeah, I want to add one little bit. There may be drawbacks of not using it as well that aren't immediately obvious, because it's just how life or work has always been done. And so sometimes those hard questions about, what are the challenges that this present? Well, now that we're moving in this direction globally, what are those drawbacks of not integrating with it now as a team? I think are also questions that we should ask and answer. The last one that I'm seeing, maybe there's some other ones that I'm not seeing here, from Peter Mull. What is your procedure for verifying accuracy of the product? So I'll speak to this a little bit. When we are releasing a new product, there is extensive testing that goes into extensive cycles that go into the building of it before we release it to the general public, or release it to what we call production, meaning the system that you interact with. So we have a development platform where I get to see some of these new things that are on the horizon, and we get to test them out. We get to refine them. We go through these cycles of making sure all of the outputs, the responses, are as accurate as we can make them. And sometimes that means we have to add extra logic. Sometimes that means we have to do some reinforcement learning. Sometimes that means we have to go back to the drawing board and rethink the product from square one. And so those cycles happen from a product and engineering standpoint. And then, internally we have a robust kind of a network of people who will test it in this manner, so that when it gets released to production, it's as good as it can be. And then, and to say, you still make mistakes, and there still are going to be products out there that, we get feedback from our customers who are like, hey, this looks a bit off. And we go back and figure out where it's going. So it's not even that we're perfect. It's that we're always continuously trying to move in that direction. Kevin Fromelt, what kind of security applications are in the platform to protect the data? So this would be a very good question if our CTO was here. Obviously, we do all of the industry standard benchmarks for security. So we have all of the SOC 2 compliance. We have all of the data privacy restrictions in place. And so all of if that's a concern, or if that's something that you have to verify, that's kind of part of when we have a relationship with the customer. You can get those documents, you can get those security guarantees about where's the data being stored, how is it being processed, who has access to it. All of those important IT and InfoSec questions get answered in that process. I don't see any more. Oh, a new one. Let's finish. Okay, perfect. Heather, you want to close this out?
Yeah, no, I just thank everyone for your time today and hanging in there. We're a few minutes over time, and I appreciate your attention and your questions. If we see questions in the chat or Q&A section we did not get to, we have your emails and we can respond directly to you, but also feel free to connect on LinkedIn, and we will happily respond to you there. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your afternoon.